Good morning, everyone. This is Knox County Commissioners, December 18th, 2025. Our first order of business is to do the bid opening for the consumable office supplies for 2026 Knox County DJFS. So we're doing currently signing in for everyone who was here for the meeting, and then Commissioner Lester will be opening the packets, and we will go ahead and do the bid.
Looks like this one's from Ritter.
Okay. So Ritter's has provided their summary bid sheet. The master schedule total was $6,703.34. The paper schedule total was $7,631.25. The toner ink cartridge schedule was $29,873.62, with the total being $44,208.21. I'll read those again. The master schedule 6703.34. Paper schedule 7,631.25. The toner ink 29,873.62, and the grand total 44,208.21. And that was from Rid.
This is from Quill.
So Quill's quote. Pull this sound first. Okay, so Quill's quote, the master schedule is $5,267.32. That's 5,267.32. The paper schedule was 9,232.60. That's 9,232.60. Then the toner ink cartridge schedule was $23,220.25. 23,220.25. And their grand total was 37,720.17. That's 37720.17. And I don't know whether in your bid scenario that you have to go by the sum total or you can do individual lines, but
I analyze it first to make sure that it's apples to apples, and then I send a recommendation to you.
Okay, so I need to find copies of that. So that those were the bids that we had for for office supplies. Thank you. We'll wait to hear from you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. You too.
Commissioner, we'll do the two resolutions here and then we'll go back and do the budget.
Okay.
So we have approved the certification for collection of delinquent water and wastewater accounts to the Knox County Auditor for placement upon property taxes. This is, you just need your approval to submit to the auditor.
Okay. Big motion.
Motion to approve.
And those favors say aye.
Aye.
And then we have approving an interagency agreement between Knox County Department of Job and Family Services, Licking County Job and Family Services, and the Ohio Network for Innovation for purchasing partners. And this is for guardianship services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And those in favor say aye. Aye. And then we'll go through the budget information before we do any type of approval on that.
So we had to have that ahead of time. No list. Okay, you ready to roll on this?
I believe we are.
So Andrew, I guess you could start with our packet and then we can drill into the details a little bit, as we need to. We're gonna put this up on the screens.
Yeah, and we want everyone to know that that we do this every year is one of the key things that the commissioners do is handle the budget for the whole county. And then as we go through the process, Jason has worked with the department heads to see about keeping them within the bumper guards of a budget. And this is one of the sometimes struggles that we do, but we always want to make sure that we have a budget that represents the needs of our county and the funds that we have in through the various sources of sales tax and property tax. So once we go through this, answer any questions that we need to answer, then we will make the approval to our budget.
Okay, so Andrew, if you slide down, we'll just kind of start with revenue. The estimated, Robert and I worked with the county auditor to establish this and the annual revenue estimate. Can you make that just a little bit larger, Andrew? Perfect, thank you. So the total revenue estimate for 2026 will be $28,646,233. The largest source of that is county sales tax at 12.6 million. That's 44% of our revenue. And general property tax is 6.8 million at 24% of our general revenue. If you basically look at that, those two account for 68% of all revenue that comes in to the county. Beyond that, there's a lot of small areas. Depository investment income, we're estimating at 1.6 million, which is 5.8%. Conveyance fees, 1 million. Casino fees are basically flat. We're not seeing a lot of increase in that and growth in that area at 3.2%. Local government, pretty flat, 2.6%. The public defender reimbursement, I believe, is down to 78 or 82%. So that estimate is $550,000. And so when we roll up all those kind of smaller areas, it comes to 28.6 million in revenue is the estimate for 2026. Slide on down, Andrew. So if we look at 2026 appropriations, and we'll go into some detail on these, but these are kind of the buckets that we historically kind of tracked. Our justice is $13.2 million, and that's 46% of the general fund budget. That makes up everything from the sheriff's office to the prosecutor, the courts, public defender, clerk of courts, everything that's relating to that is 46%. And then we noted the sheriff's budget is around 31% of the general fund. Insurance and
And that's also an increase.
Yes, we'll go through that in detail.
Okay.
Yes, in a minute, but yes, exactly. We'll talk about what changed in that area. Yes. Insurance and contingencies is 3.7. That's everything from medical insurance to car insurance, liability insurance, building insurance, as well as contingencies is 13% of the budget. State mandates and funding to JFS is 1.3 million, and that's 5% of the budget. The Veterans Office is budgeting $1 million. That's allowable. We'll talk about that, but that's 3% of the budget. The Board of Elections has increased to 3% of the budget. And then we kind of have smaller areas of community support, agricultural, capital, and then everything else is 20% of the budget, and that's, and I have a slide in here that shows what makes up all that other general of $5.8 million of 20%. The major changes to the budget, and I guess, can you make that a little bigger? Yeah, thank you. So the general fund budget is increasing by 1.4 million from 2025 to 2026. And 60% of that increase is the Knox County Sheriff's Office and jail. their increase in budget is around $860,000. And that comprises 60% of the total increase in budget for the year. Beyond that, there's not a lot of areas, but bond debt was for what we've done to this building and other capital projects. The bond debt increased by 101,000 from last year to this year. Our insurance, as we talked about, medical insurance and our liability insurance premiums increased by 91,000, 92,000.
And on those insurance increases, those increases is included even for the sheriff's office.
That's correct.
Is that the insurance increase doesn't include what the sheriff's office had also.
That's correct. That's not budgeted in all general fund departments are budgeted out of one line. And we only saw a medical increase of 2% in premiums year over year, which was outstanding, but it's still 2% of a fairly large number. And then with the liability insurance increase, that came to 92,000. The Board of Elections budget has increased again by $67,000 due to staffing and some equipment issues, equipment needs. We had juvenile probate court was up around 49,000. Veteran services went up by 44,000. Those were the main ones. All other increases were $59,834. So there wasn't a lot of other increases, but I think the main, obviously, short of the sheriff's office increase of $860,000, the rest of the budget came in. Other than the requirements, everybody came in pretty much right on target with minor increases, and we had no issues in the budget process. The next slide down just makes up when we talk about that 5.8 million of all other departments. Obviously, we don't list them all out, or it would get a little lengthy. But building and grounds is all of our maintenance budget plus all of our repair budget for non-capital repairs throughout the year. That comes in at 1.2 million, which is 4.5% of the budget. The Board of Commissioners, I always like to call that out. Our budget's 1.1 million, but for people that look at that, that's not to be alarmed. The commissioners, we budget lots of things for the entire county. For instance, we cover all the postage. We do tax settlements. We provide funding to community support, ADF, the dog shelter, transit, those kinds of things. All that stuff comes out of our budget. So obviously that makes our budget look inflated, even though it's not. IT is $599,000 budget, and just kind of note 180,000 of that is offset by our city contract. So even though that IT number has grown, so has the contract with the city. And then we also provide IT support to Gambier, Fredericktown, and Fredericktown EMS. So we do bill back for those services as well. So we do see some recapture of that expense back. But this kind of walks you down. I won't go through all of them, but these are the major ones, or everything else that makes up the 5.8 million of other in the general fund budget that we looked at earlier. And so the last slide, this is kind of, I like to put together what I view as risk to our budget. Just basically economy. Sales tax is 44% of our revenue, but the sales tax can be volatile. I mean, people can decide to some extent what they purchase when it comes to vehicles and those kinds of things, and what they don't. So that has grown, and but that's not a fixed amount. It's based on consumer spending. So that is somewhat a risk. Property tax is 24% of our revenue, and there's a lot of talk about property tax reform and those kinds of things. And I just want to point out that makes up 24% of the general fund budget. So if something would come along with that, we will have to adjust. Basic inflation of project costs, we're seeing obviously an increase in investment earnings, but that's due to interest rates and those kinds of things. And obviously when we do projects, it's costing us more money to do projects. It costs us more money to buy and replace equipment. And so that's a risk. Children's service placement costs, continuing to budget $1 million for them this year to help offset some of their shortage. And that's basically barely keeping them up, so that's a risk. We have lots of court grants, staff that's paid by state grants, and we hope that those continue, so those expenses wouldn't fall back to the general fund. And then the last one is just our sheriff's office, expense trends. I put this graph on here to kind of show you, and I mentioned that they were 60% of the general fund budget increase this year. But I wanted to kind of go back and show you the trend over the last 6 years. 6 years ago, the sheriff's office budget was $5.6 million, and now we're at $9 million. And so the increase from last year to, well, the current year to next year is about a 10% increase. This trend shows you over the last 6 years, we've seen a 10% increase year over year on average. It's not sustainable. County revenue will not be able to keep up with a 10% inflationary spending in the sheriff's office year over year. It can't happen. So that's an area that we're gonna have to address, with the current sheriff and administration to try to get some guardrails there to flatten us out a little bit, because a 10% average is.
What have we tracked where that spending for $3 million over 5 years has come from, Jason, where the big increases were?
It's all over the board. We've done a lot of salary increases at the sheriff's office over the last 3 to 4 years. That's certainly been a piece. We've shifted to a medical jail contract, which runs us around $500,000 a year that's for medical services, mental health services. That certainly has been an increase. The cost of vehicles have gone up. We've done new contracts for body cams, tasers. It's just really across the board, Commissioner. I just think it's something, if you look at that and you look at 10%, that's sitting here a year from now, we can't have another $1 million increase in the sheriff's office.
You're gonna end up 60% of the budget being to the sheriff's department.
And as we go through this, you look at the general fund, there's just not a lot of other departments that take that out of.
Right.
There's just not, there's not that much left. So this isn't the new sheriff's administration's problem. This is a cyclical problem that, if you look, and that's why I wanted to show you a 6-year trend. It's happening year over year over year. And we're gonna have to make some hard decisions at some point, because it can't continue to go up $1 million. We know one thing's for sure, our revenue is not gonna increase by $1 million from 2026 to 2027. So there's gonna be some level of tax reform one way or the other. And when that happens, our revenue is gonna be adjusted. And so this is an area that we're gonna have to address at some point. So I just wanted to call that out to show you that chart. And again, that's not picking on the current administration. This is a 6-year trend, and I just kind of wanted to show that of an area that we're seeing out there. So your other packet that I gave you, there's just a few areas that I wanted to call out. If you go to page 1 of that, just a few areas. We're not going to go through each one of these, but on the commissioner's budget, you'll see we have down a reduction in postage. That's really because we had some money left in the current budget. Robin went ahead and kind of loaded up the postage machine with this year's funding, so we were able to take a little bit of funding out of next year for that. Down in departmental support, we took out 50,000. We're reducing what we are giving the animal shelter next year. They've done some things to, we increased dog tag fees last year to $20, so that can get some of that expense off the general fund. So we're able to save a little bit of money there. And then that last item, property tax of 20,000, there wasn't anything last year. That's just because we used to put that in other, and we pulled that out of other into its own line item to pay for. So that's the taxes that the county does have to pay for buildings that we collect rent on, or some of our parking lots, I believe, right, Penny, are required to pay taxes on, if they're used for if the community can use them as well, there's some tax implications. So we do pay a little bit of property tax and we've shifted that. So that's why you see an increase there. On the top of the next page, contract counsel. So we kind of control that budget. These are for conflict cases at the courts. And I've increased that by $10,000 just based on what the courts have spent this year. The run rate between common pleas, juvenile court, and municipal court. Down at the bottom of that page, HR wellness, I just want to point out that it's general fund money that's paid up front, but we receive all of that money back from our healthcare provider. That's a pass through. So we budget that and then we expense it out, we submit our expenses, and then we're reimbursed through a wellness grant to cover those activities. On page 3, IT department, again, I just want to point out their budget is $591,000. But there is probably between $180,000 and $190,000 in direct billings that come back to the county for their contracts that offsets part of their budget.
Well, when I first became a commissioner, that we had 2 part-time, or we were actually with ECR, I think it was InfoLink, and we were spending about 280,000 for 2.5 people, and we don't have half as much as the security we have now with our IT people, because they're doing the cybersecurity, they're doing everything that Corsa insurance people have asked of them, and so they've stepped up to the plate, and so it's and they've kept their expenses down. So we started out with 2.5, and we have 5, 6 people up there.
Yeah, so 6, right? Andrew? 6,
Seven.
7.
Yeah.
Which Andrew's one of those. It helps us stay straight and narrow down here too. So.
And then the regional planning, again, the prior commissioners didn't budget anything for 2025. They left that to the new commissioners, and we did fund them 26,000 this year. It wasn't in the budget, but they did get funded. And then, so that will be back in the 2026 budget. So that's why you see an increase. You see an increase there. Let's see, let's see, nothing major in the auditor's office really to point out. The prosecutor's budget was reduced. He's on page 4, halfway down page 4. Prosecutor's office budget went down about, I guess it was about $16,000, 17,000. Part of that was just the staffing that his staffing is set up. We weren't sure how that was going to look last year, so we budgeted a little extra in there and we didn't need it. And then the equipment was taken out because that $11,000 last year was for new computers, and they did not have a need for that in 2026. So we're good there. The last item on that page, just to point out again, $100,000. That's approximately what we pay each year for the state to audit the county. This year, I think the cost came in around 90 to 95, but we typically budget 100 because we never know. We never know for sure. On top of page 5, technology, again, that is items that are not in the IT budget, but it's things that we pay for countywide. So, such as Rate Stuff, which is our tracking software for timekeeping, that's a countywide system. Duo that we do for our security to log into our computers. Those kinds of things we pay out of the technology budget because it's not any one department, it covers everybody in the county. And so there's a slight increase in there, and that's because Right Stuff is now completely countywide. The sheriff's office is up and running on that system as well. And so the annual maintenance contract for that is included now. The big item down on the bottom of page 5, jury commission. The item that Judge Wetzel has in there, the contract service was nothing, and then you see 27,900. They're going to a new, is it called e-justice? Is that what it is?
Yes,
An e-justice system. And so part of that we had to pay was for an implementation, and then it's like 12 or 14,000 annually. So next year that'll go down, but in year 1 we had to pay to get implemented as well as for the annual maintenance on it. So that was a $27,000 jump in the jury commission budget. In juvenile probation on page 6, the only item really they had of significance was just the juvenile detention. The detention cost for juveniles has risen. And they asked for $160,000 next year instead of the current $150,000 that we budgeted. And I think that was warranted based on run rate of what they're spending this year and what the costs are for juvenile detention. Let's see. We go back to page 8. When we look at the coroner's budget, municipal court budget, those are really just estimates that I put together based on what their spending is in the current year. We really don't know, obviously, we don't know how many autopsies will be performed by the coroner and those kinds of things. So we kind of just look at a trend of where we ran this year and kind of go from there. Municipal court, for you to know, again, the county is required by Ohio Revised Code. We pay 2/5 of the budget for the judge, the bailiff, and the clerk in the municipal court's office. And so we pay those, and then we also contribute towards the city law director a little bit. So that's what the municipal court budget is. It's required by code, and that's our contribution to their budget or to their budget. We're estimating that to be about $162,000 expense to the county in 2026. The Board of Elections budget. This is another one that is just continuing to increase year over year. I know the prior commissioner said this is going to be $1 million budget before long, and they weren't wrong. It's up to $909,000 in 2026. Part of that was salary increases for the tech position that you authorized them to put in there this year. Polling help, and then again to point out, we put another $200,000. You authorized me to move that $200,000 last week or the week before to put another $200,000 in their reserve fund to get ready for new election equipment. So there's $400,000 in that reserve fund now. And we hope in 2026 we could put some more money away. Talking to Mr. Blazer, it appears that could be up to $1 million in cost of new equipment in 2027. And so we're trying to put as much money away to help offset that. And we also hope, Barry and I had a conversation with the state rep when he was in. Try to hopefully get the state to do something to that when it's time to buy new equipment like they did last time. But we're trying to put as much money as we can away to not have that be a hit to the general fund when it's time to spend that money.
The 200,000 that you are putting in reserve isn't shown in
You don't see it here. You'll see it when we do the non-general fund budget. At the
Okay.
beginning of the year, you'll see it in there.
Okay.
That the money's there. On page 9, under buildings and grounds, I called that out on that sheet that the cost was up $101,000. The bulk of that you'll see is bond payment. Our bond payments went from $615,900 to $722,000. And that is for the bond that we did for the transit building. So that's where you see that in there. That's the increase. On maintenance and operations, that's actually our maintenance department budget. You do see a $15,000 increase in office utilities. That's really, we keep getting squeezed on the electric costs going up and up, but we are hopeful with the efficiencies we've done in this building, from new windows, new HVAC equipment, that we're only increasing it by 15,000. We're hopeful that our efficiencies will offset some of the increases in costs that we've seen. So we didn't get too aggressive, but I think that's a solid number. I think we can hit that for 2026 at $380,000. But that includes electric, put all you pay everything: electric, gas, water, trash.
All utilities.
Yeah, even cell phone, anything, all that comes out of there. So.
Internet.
On page 10, the airport is very similar to the coroner and municipal court. We just kind of budget based on run rates. We pay for that up front out of the general fund, and then we bill them back twice a year for all of that cost. So we'll receive whatever they spend, we'll receive all of that back. Twice a year, we recapture that. So the sheriff's budget, you'll see. And again, they did ask for more than what we're authorizing them, but we just didn't have the funding to give them everything they desired. So we did pull out a cruiser. They had asked for 4 cruisers or 3 cruisers and a detective vehicle. We did need to take 1 vehicle out. We reduced the fuel, the maintenance cost, some legal expenses. I did back down their utilities. I thought the utility request was maybe a touch high, but we'll see as the year goes on. And so that got them down to the 5.1, $5.2 million. There is a lot of, there's a lot of labor out there in the contract. We have a union contract, and the wage increases that they would receive in 2026 are in there. So those are some things we can't adjust. But the sheriff, it looks like probably the biggest item you'll see is in salaries of employees, the second line. That's adding a position from what the prior administration had. So part of that is in there. And then they also are adding, I believe, a detective, forensic detective. And so those 2 positions are about $100,000 each. So there's a couple of pretty good bumps to the budget from a salary or from a new staffing standpoint. On the jail side, which is the next page on 11, the jail side was actually fairly good between salary increase and some of the other things. There wasn't a lot they could adjust, but it went up about $200,000, a little less than $200,000. That side was pretty in line with what was, needed, and there wasn't much they could adjust. I took a little bit of money out of inmate care based on the run rate and our contract, but short of that, there wasn't much else to move there. It was really on the administrative side of the budget. Page 12, the civil defense, that is just the county's contribution to emergency management of $116,000. I think there's a lot of volatility with that EMA office as far as what the federal government's funding, what the state's funding, and so we're racing to see what 2026 looks like and how EMA will handle that as we go in. But the county has been contributing $116,000 a year to the EMA office. On page 13, agriculture, we OSU Extension asked for a $5,000 increase due to some cost shifts, and that we were able to do. We weren't able to add the position that they had wanted, but we did increase their budget by $5,000. Soil and water had a request of $17,000, a $17,000 increase. That's really how Rob and soil and water, they get state match. So what we do with them, they receive state matching funds. And so to kind of fill out his budget, that's kind of the number he needed to get to get his state match to meet his overall budget. I think, soil and water does a lot of things for us at the county, and so we try to support them as we can. But the total agriculture the county spends is, and this is discretionary funding, other than a little bit we're required by code to give the fair, was $526,000 goes out to agricultural activities in the county. Health and welfare, that's a name change. It used to be called for handicap or crippled children, and that's a state mandate. They just send us a letter and say, your county is responsible to pay $233,823 next year, and they bill us throughout the year, and we're required by code to pay that. So we don't have any say in that one. Down at the bottom of page 14 is another one. That's just the mandated share of public assistance. Again, the state sends us a letter and says this is the number you need to budget for 2026. JFS will send us down a letter in January, February, and ask for that, and we send the money upstairs to them as the state's mandated share. The veterans budget, go in a lot of detail on that, but they're budgeting $1 million. Again, the Ohio Revised Code allows them to get 0.5 mils of property tax collection. And so they're actually allowed, based on that calculation, if we receive the taxes that are estimated, they would be allowed to request almost $1.2 million next year. We're budgeting 1 million of it at this time. But they would have more funds available if they would request it of you, and you required by law to give back to them if they ask. But that number has certainly grown a lot in the last few years. On page 16, I'm sorry, on page 15. Just want to call out, it's not that big of a deal, but the math department had requested a little additional budgeting for their summer intern. They had him here last year, and I think they want to bring him back and finish some projects this summer. So that's part of their salary increase request. Insurance, the first line there, insurance, that's our county medical insurance, that premiums that we pay. And again, it's a 2% increase, but then you'll see it a little bit higher. I always put some contingency in there because it's so hard to tell. We could have an employee that's on a single plan that gets married and then goes to a family plan, or one employee leaves that doesn't take insurance and we hire somebody else that does, and we just don't know. So I try to put a little bit of buffer in there to make sure we have it covered. The county building insurance is Corsa. Again, that's based on what we estimate to see in 2026. And that's everything from liability insurance, vehicle insurance, building insurance, employee malpractice insurance. That's everything. Covers that, and that's $320,000. And a big piece of that too is cyber insurance. That has certainly increased in cost over the last several years. The landfill, just kind of want to point that out. You'll see it goes from 175 this year to 193. Increased. U.S. Commissioner made a decision earlier this year that you wanted to keep that compost facility open and active for the public to use. And so we did a new contract, and the cost to kind of keep that open and make it available to the public went up some. And so that's why that landfill, we call it the landfill, but the professional services piece is the compost facility. And then the contract services was actually Bennett and Williams maintaining the actual closed landfill, or doing all the environmental on the closed landfill. So that's why there's a little bit of a budget increase there. And then under miscellaneous, I'm requesting again a $450,000 contingency to the budget. That's what we budgeted for this year. And it's a big number, but it's 1.5% of the total budget. So it's not a big piece. I think, again, the departments have done a really good job of budgeting what their needs are, and they are not putting contingencies in their budgets. They trust us that we have them covered if we really do have unforeseen events. And so we budget it in contingencies, and then we monitor that, and I report that to you every month as well, so you know what that is. And then lastly, we are estimating $1 million again to Children's Services to support them through their funding struggles. And when you roll all that up, it comes to $28,644,279, which gives us a positive budget of $1,954. So it was awfully close, but we got there.
Just straight right for shame there.
Jason, thank you, and Robin as well.
Thank you.
Lot of numbers, a lot of moving pieces.
It's a lot of months to get the one sheet of paper, but
Good.
Do you have any concerns, Robin, or thoughts on this?
We did the guidance of the license. We get a motion to accept this.
Yep. It's,
Motion to accept the budget for 2026.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye. Alright. So the budget for 26 is now approved and. I know that see next Tuesday. We'll have our meeting. We won't have any next Thursday. For those who wanna. Shovel snow on Christmas Day, you'll be disappointed. I hear there's gonna be any snow.
Gonna be 70 and sunny.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I don't think, we're still waiting on.
We
the
will meet.
paperwork
Yeah.
for the transit.
right, we'll meet on the 23rd for a brief session to get the transit project out to bid and for you to make a decision on the gap.
Oh,
For our
yes.
public hearing the other night, so those would be the two items we have on Tuesday. And then Penny may have a few contracts and things to sign. Then again, yeah, we won't meet Thursday, the following week, on the 30th. At this point, we're planning probably a bills only day to be signed, but if we did have any last minute utility permits or anything like that, we'll just do a really quick session to sign those and that would be it. And then the non-general fund budget, we'll bring to you. I don't know, maybe. The 8th of January, we'll see, it depends, we have to wait for the auditor to close the year out. And then reconcile balances before I can bring you that, it's ready, it just, we have to verify a few things. So. I know we'll do our reorganizational meeting on the 6th, right, Penny? Will be your reorganizational meeting, and then if we can do it, we'll do the budget on the 8th. That way we can get the county back open for business.
Great. Anything?
I think the Ford Creek hearing went well.
For the, what,
6 property owners that were there.
yes. Yeah, so everyone have a great weekend. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We will stand adjourned. I've had a motion for that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And we stand adjourned. Everyone have a great weekend.